Does that happen normally when you hang out with a real celebrity like Bubba Wallace?
Hey, I always say, dude, I'm his photographer when I'm out with him. Like, they're like, "Hey, Bubba." And they're like, "Hey, who are you?" I'm like, "I'm just his PR guy."
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the Money Lap Podcast. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon, Cassill. And no, I haven't changed this intro yet, but this is an exciting one. Because our guest we have joining us today comes from a family steeped in racing tradition. Yet I think he broke the mold. In his first NASCAR start in an underfunded car, he finished 7th. And 11 years later would go on to win the sport's biggest prize. It's none other than the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Ryan Blaney on the Money Lap, my man. Thank you very much for coming here. We appreciate it. I meant to say,
That was a heck of a- You got me fired
we
up.
appreciate it. Yeah, well, I meant to say champion all drawn out like champion, but I didn't do it. So,
It was still plenty good for my standards. I mean, anything would have been
well,
acceptable.
you did get the biggest prize we have in the sport. But before we get into that, I do have a really important burning question that's been coming across my mind lately. And that is, do you think you have the most tattoos of any NASCAR Cup Series champion ever?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah. Definitely. I've lost count, but I haven't gotten any new ones in about 3 years. But I've kind of stalled out on it. But I still probably have like triple, quadruple the amount of the other champions. Yeah.
Do you plan on getting a champion tattoo like on your chest, right below where it goes underneath the suit? Like,
No.
Is there going to be any kind of NASCAR champion tattoo artwork or?
It's something I've actually thought about. Like we won the Coke 600, and they had a really cool logo that used to be like the World 600, and I thought about getting that. Like I have some on my leg. Like I wouldn't get it to where like you could see it easy, but maybe like a little logo there, maybe a little cup trophy on my leg, something you can't see. But maybe, I don't know yet. We'll see.
Something for the more intimate viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, about 2 people would see these tattoos, myself and Sean. So.
I just thought, I was like, there's got to be nobody who's that tatted up that's done this, which is awesome. And I think, it speaks to your personality and what you're all about. But I have to say, you did accomplish getting the biggest prize. You are a champion. You get that little patch that Landon alluded to on your suit. Like, what has it been like since you accomplished this thing that we all dream of doing, right? When you start this as a kid, you're like, I'm going to be a champ. I'm going to be the best there is. You've done it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's something you think about it as a kid, right? Like, man, I want to be that, but you never, like, I never at least, like, pictured doing it, like, it's always your goal, but you never, like, think about that really until it happens. Gosh, I remember saying on the stage multiple times to people, they're like, "Can you believe it?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I cannot believe it." It's just things happen super quickly, and it's just, yeah. I mean, I wanted to do it as a kid, obviously, but you never know when it's going to happen. I think that makes it more special, right? You don't know when it's going to happen until it finally does, and then it makes you appreciate it even more. And then you think back on like when you're growing up racing, watching guys win championships. You're like, man, I want to strive to be those people. When I was growing up, Jimmy and Tony Stewart and Jeff, I wanted to be those guys, and was really lucky to be able to be with a group that gave me opportunities to do it. And for that, I'll always be grateful.
You looking back on that year, there were so many other drivers that maybe we could say it was their year, right? Denny Hamlin, it's always Denny Hamlin's year. William Byron had an incredible year. And not to say that you don't go into every season, especially, driving the car you're driving, thinking, okay, this is how am I going to win the championship this year? But it seemed like your championship was something of a walk-off home runs in the last couple the last innings, right? You just came to life those last 6 or 8 weeks of the playoffs and shoehorned yourself into championship contention. So what was that like? Like, what did it for you emotionally? Did it just come together all at once, or was that a culmination of your preparations?
Yeah, I think I look back at our year, and I've heard people be like, "Well, Blaney just had a really not a good year until like the final 5 weeks. And it's like, well, I was leading points after, like before the summer break. Like before Sonoma, I was leading points. And so we had a good first half. And then we just struggled for 2.5 months in the summer, and just trying things, and a lot of stuff we were trying just wasn't working. And it took us a while to kind of weed through, okay, where do we need to continue to improve on? Obviously, what we're doing now and what we think is the right direction is obviously not. And that was really our whole company. And, I think we learned from all those things that didn't work in the summer, and we could go another direction for when the playoffs started. And there was a lot of hard conversations. I mean, you get to August, late August, early September, hey, the playoffs are creeping up. Like, there was a lot of talks. Our team sit down and be like, hey, we're not anywhere close good enough to compete for a championship. Like, if we keep running like this, we're going to be out in round 1, maybe make it to round 2, but we got to find something. And we set a deadline, in our company to hey, we got to be better for these 10 weeks. And props to everybody. They met that deadline. And I would say it was really full speed ahead when we won Talladega. Like we ran okay in the first round. We ran okay at Texas, the first race of the round of 12, but I sped and we got in a wreck, and then we went to Talladega, really kind of needing to win, and we did that. And once that happened, it was like all the confidence of the world in our group. We showed up to the round of 8 at Vegas, Miami, and Martinsville, and just absolutely was the best car for 3 weeks, and then followed it up at Phoenix. And so it was a lot of hard work. These things don't just happen, and I don't take any credit for it. I mean, we just got better throughout the year. I mean, everyone worked hard to get where we needed to go. And when everything's kind of flowing, when you feel like you're doing your job behind the wheel well, when the cars can respond to what you can do, like all that stuff just came together like at a perfect time. And just a lot of hard work. And I mean, I look back at 22. I thought we had a overall better year in 22, even though I only won the All-Star race, but we were way faster in 22 throughout the whole year. Like, we were competing a lot more for wins and up front, and 23 was definitely a harder year. We just peaked at a perfect time, and continued to just build on what we were doing and learn from what we were doing that wasn't working, and it led to the championship. So.
Well, and you just said it there, peaked at the perfect time. It just shows how timing is important for everything. Hey, hold on a second here. While we're talking to Ryan Blaney about Ryan Blaney, are you a Ryan Blaney enthusiast? Are you looking for Ryan Blaney quality diecast and apparel? Well, then look no further than SpoilerDiecast.com, one of the fastest growing companies in the industry. Let me tell you, Parker, and anybody else listening, I feel like I'm in a room by myself right now, recording this, not as a transition from the rest of the podcast. Anyways, at SpoilerDiecast.com, we pride ourselves on exceptional service. All their orders ship either same or next day, ensuring you get your hands on your favorite products in no time. And the best part, they offer free shipping on orders over $20. That's right, you can enjoy smooth and affordable shipping experience with SpoilerDiecast.com, even smoother than this transition from the interview to this ad read. They have over 800 unique products currently in stock, and I know that number's going up with the race season starting. SpoilerDiecast.com boasts one of the largest inventories in the industry. They're NASCAR focused, but they also have a wide range of products, so IndyCar, F1, dirt sprint cars, so there might be some other Blaney stuff in there, I would imagine. They are passionate race fans, constantly growing their offerings, cater to all different forms of racing. Back to the show.
Hey, wait, real quick. There's also my own diecast, number 48 Big Machine Racing diecast available there. Go buy it, SpoilerDiecast.com. All right, back to the show.
Well, and you just said it there, peaked at the perfect time. It just shows how timing is important for everything, especially now. Wins are so valuable that probably makes that peaking even more important, because you just have to win at the right time. So you mentioned, you had hard conversations, right? You had to get together as a team and look ahead 3, 4, 5 weeks, and say, okay, we've got to set deadlines for ourselves. We're going to set some new goals, restructure our strategy moving forward so that we can get through the playoffs. What was your role in all that? Like, we know where the team, the engineers and the crew chiefs, they go on their projects, but leaving those meetings, what was your role?
Yeah, I mean, my role in those meetings and week in and week out is obviously, right, your role behind the wheel on the racetrack is important, right? Doing the best you can, getting every little ounce of speed out of your race car that you can get. But then also, when every ounce you can get is like a great day, we run, 7th or 8th, it kind of goes to, all right, you have to stay positive. You're like, okay, guys, I think we're gaining on it. But then also really pick out areas of like, we are super weak here. Like as a driver, like, hey, we can't get in the corner. That was a big thing. Like we could not get in the corner as fast as other guys. Like we just can't, we can't do it. I can't drive in 5 car lengths deeper like everybody else. How can we get that? Like that is the first bit of speed. How can we get that? Okay, we found that. Now let's start working our way around the corner. All right, how can we do that? So it's like my role was pinpointing the big issues where we needed to get better and where we focus. Like it's easy just saying, hey, we need to be faster. Like that's kind of, okay, where do you work if you're saying we just need to be faster? But if you can like pick out areas of the track that we really need to focus on, that was like my main goal. Like pick out a spot where we're the weakest, let's go to work there, and then you can kind of figure it out.
And to that point, I find fascinating is you were pinpointing that and pointing it out, and I think for Landon and I, we always want to dive into the driving with drivers, right, and sort of how you approach driving. So like, what is your process to identify that issue? You're seeing it obviously on the racetrack, but are you looking at data? What is your process to prepare for each weekend? How do you approach racing as a race car driver at this level and find those things out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to figure out where you're getting beat is just during the race, right? Like, okay, during the race, I got my butt kicked here in this area all race. And then obviously, data. I mean, we have so much data nowadays too, like you can look at it through practice, but there's only so much you can do like during the weekend. In our cars now, you can't go change springs, right? Like, so you're kind of locked in. So you have to like prepare weeks out and compare tracks. Like before we go to a 1.5 miles, 3 weeks out, we're like, all right, we really need to focus on this because we're super weak here. Let's think about, hey, how can we be good at Kansas, getting into the corner fast? And we focused on that, at Daytona, before the playoffs even started. Like, 2, 3, 4 weeks out, you would look at each track and be like, all right, we have to, I know where we need to, where we're going to struggle, just track history and, 1.5 mile history or short track history. Like that's where we need to really put our main focus. So that starts weeks in advance. It's not just when you unload, and go on the track, because then you're kind of too late. You're playing behind the 8 ball at that point.
What would you?
Oh, go ahead.
What would you say you as a driver, your trends are and your styles? What tracks does that lend to, and what tracks doesn't it?
Yeah, my styles it's changed over the years. Like some of it has changed, others not. You kind of just redefine what you do. Like I've always been a heavy right foot driver. Like I just have tons of throttle, and that's what I've always been like. And it can get you in trouble in some places, obviously. And I drive with my hands a lot. So like a loose race car is great for me because I drive a lot with my hands. Like I don't know, like you ever seen Harvick's in car? Like he never stops moving his hands. Like that's kind of like that. Like I'm just always a sawer on the wheel, and and that allows me to be freer, drive a looser race car, and it allowed me to be able to, hey, we got to free up. Like a big thing, we were so tight getting in the corner, like the car just wouldn't turn, so we'd have to lift super early. So it's like, all right, I can stand to be probably freer than most getting in here and compromise this because I just drive with my hands a lot. I can hang on to it here, and if that's going to get us speed, I will deal with it. Like I can do it. I can deal with it. And other things like you evolve too. Like you go to different racetracks. I tried to figure out how. Okay, sometimes it's not good to be out of control, loose, and sawing on the wheel the whole race. Like, all right, how can I evolve myself to drive a tighter race car efficiently and fast? So it's like just trying to change up your skill set too for what the track requires of you or what your car is doing at the same time. Like it's difficult, and just it's easy. It's easier when your cars get a lot faster, like ours did. Like, okay, I can say like, oh, I changed my stuff up a lot, and we went faster. Like, no, our cars got really fast, and that just made me look better than, obviously, like you can look like a superhero. So, I think changing your driving style up too to kind of mold yourself after what's needed and what your stuff's giving you is like super important. I've tried to do that. I've tried to like change up your mindset each week to figure out, okay, what's like the best way to approach this. And if I have to change my style up too, then so be it. I have to do that. So
Yep. How do you approach that, and do you have to like consciously think about it? I know personally one of the things I've had to work on is at short tracks changing my braking profile, right? I'm peaky. What makes me fast at road courses hurts me like every time getting the corner at short track. So I've had to consciously change the way I brake at those places. Is that sort of what you're talking about? And how does that, like, when you go into a weekend being like, I know I have to change this, are you having to think about it? And do you do that in practice and then sort of see if you can mimic it in the race, or how do you go through that?
yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I've always tried to, everyone has SMT data now, right? So you can see every other driver's throttle, brake, steering, all that stuff on this little tablet. And I feel like if I am not consciously going into the weekend with like a certain style that I am thinking about, like I can't just change it up from practice. Like I can't look at my stuff in practice, be like, oh, that guy's doing that and he's faster. Let me just change this up for qualifying or the race. Like I just mentally cannot do that. So I have to I'll watch SMT the week of and be like, okay, this guy was doing this and it was really good. Let me go into this weekend fully committing to this is how I'm going to drive the race car, and I'm not going to change it up. Like I'm going to have my car, change it up to where I can drive it to where I need to be this way with the throttle. Like Homestead's a great example. Kyle Larson's amazing at Homestead. He gets in the corner super fast right up by the wall, and he just touches the throttle really early, by just like 10% throttle for a long time. And I went to Homestead like, okay, this is what I have to do. I'm entering right by the fence, and I'm going to just touch throttle and just like not get too aggressive with throttle. That's another thing, like I talked about having a heavy right foot. I would always go back to the gas too hard, have to come back out of it, and then I can finish the corner. So it's like I had to put that in my head before I even got in the car, before I even flew to Miami, to where like, this is how you have to do it. And that's just how I've mentally only been able to do these things. Like if I start driving one way and then try to switch, I can't do it.
I love that. It's such a good mindset, because it's like having a purpose-driven mindset going into these races. And the most success I've had, I have very specific races I can think of in my career where I just executed a strategy, like you said, from day one. Going into Martinsville and saying, man, I really think based on all the data that I've looked at, it's saying I need to beat everybody into the corner, right? I want to make time into the corner, and I'm committed all my simulator work, talking to my team, whether I was on iRacing, everything I did going into it to accomplish that one goal, and sort of saying to myself, hey, if that's the wrong strategy, then I guess I'll pay the price for it at the racetrack. But this is the strategy I'm pursuing, and and you go to the track and you execute on it and you have a great weekend. I mean, that's an incredible, that is the right way to do it for every single race.
Some guys can switch it up like on the fly, like some guys can just do that. And obviously you're adjusting like as the race goes on, but like
once you're in the race, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Who do you see that changes it up? Do you know like specifically?
Like Kyle Busch can do it like nothing. Like he could go make a run in practice, look at data in between runs, and change up like, all right, now I'm going to drive like this because other guys are driving like this, and do it like flawlessly right away. And it's like, dude, that's just a talent that like that, certain guys are just so talented at doing that. And I've just never been able to do that efficiently. Well, I just screwed it up even worse than what I was before I started doing it. So
you made a really good point, and then I'll get to another question that I have too. But you made a really good point that I think, it has a lot to do with building your car around that strategy, though. It's like, hey, if we think that making time on entry at Homestead, running the fence is going to be what builds the best car, then you're going to work through simulator work and in practice to balance the car for that. Once you get in the race, you got what you got, right? So that's where I think that talent of being able to switch and go, okay, that didn't work out, now we got to change plans. That's fine. I'm curious what going from, and I know it's been 2 years, but going from the old car, which we all grew up on, the different tire, to the next gen. It's the first time we've had a fundamental car and tire change in our careers, right? We've just driven these NASCAR style cars for so long. What have you had to, what does the next gen need from you that's new? right? What have you had to start thinking about in your driving style to maximize speed on this car that maybe you didn't have to think about as much with the old car?
Yeah, like you said, we're 2 years into it, and I feel like everyone had to really change up how they approached the weekends, from everyone. I mean, but I could just specifically speak on the driver's side. Like, I think the biggest thing that I had to learn was, I talked about I love loose race cars, love them. I can make speed with them. The old car, it had tons of side force in it, right? So you could lean on, that side force a good bit, and be able to slide the car around a ton and not get in trouble. This new car, and I think you saw it a lot, like the first 2-3 months that we had it in 22, a lot of guys were busting their butts because there's no side force in this new car, right? Like, you get to a yaw point, it's gone. It's like an Indy car. Like, when you start losing that downforce number, it's going away. So you saw a lot of guys spinning out, wrecking in practice, like, just because it was totally different. So that's what I had to change up about me. And I did it a few times. Like, you get loose, like, I'm good, and then you're done. Like, where you thought you could have 3 times the amount of yaw than you actually could, because the old car was better with that. So I've actually had to back off, like, hey, I can't drive these cars as free as I used to, just because the car won't take it, and and I feel like the tire with this one, the smaller sidewall and stiffer sidewall, like, it doesn't have as much kind of squish in the tire, right? Because that also went into it. Like, you kind of would yaw it out, and the tire would kind of squish, and the side force would catch you, and the tire would do it. But now, like, the yaw angle with these things it's not even close to what it is. So, like, hey, I gotta figure out how to not drive this thing as loose as I used to, because I'm going to bust my butt. And I did a few times, and then it's like, all right, how do you learn from that? How do you back it off? And here's the limit, and let's stay like 5% below the limit, because if you get even close to it, you're in big trouble.
Do you feel like you have the limit sort of figured out, or is it like you said there at the end, it's now you just know to be below it? Like, have you gotten that feel in these cars and been like, I know when it's breaking away? Or is it still so vague that you have to be that little percentage under what that limit is on the right rear?
I feel like it's still, like, I have a good idea of it, but it's still pretty vague. Like, you'll feel like you're okay still, and then it's just gone. Like, you can go from 80% grip to 0 really quick, and you there's not very often you can drive it out of big moments anymore. You used to see guys like 30 degrees hung out, big moment, but you can straighten it back out. These, like, you'll get either the loose and twitch and like over and correct back to the right, or the thing just is absolutely gone. So I feel like you understand the limit, and it's track dependent, right? Like, a Kansas is going to snap way quicker than like a Miami. You can still kind of slide the car around just because the tire's a little bit better, and not as hard. But I personally have just tried to stay a couple percentages below that limit, the oh crap moment, because it can be pretty bad.
Well, it worked for you really well at Martinsville and Phoenix last year. I just remember those 2 drives specifically. Martinsville, man, I was sitting there on pit road, and I was like, he has got them beat by a mile. And you might have been able to do the track like a whole lap ahead of everyone, or 2.
That
was
like,
that fast.
That was like the dream day. That was like, you have those cars that are just like, I can do anything I want whenever I want. And it's always, you have a good race car when you're just riding around and you're like keeping pace with the fast guys. You're like, all right, I can up this thing a little bit, and I'm going to go past these guys whenever I want. So that's a unicorn car right there, and it was fun to drive it.
Yeah, that's when they're telling you take care of it, and you're like, I can't go any slower. Like,
this thing,
I'm literally not driving, but it's still working for me. I want to flip to 2024 now, and just sort of looking ahead. You did the Clash. You started off, I think, in one of the cooler ways, which was passing a whole bunch of cars. Like, so sort of picked up where you left off last year. I know that's a weird track, and it's not really representative of anything we do going forward, but like, after the off season of celebrating being a champ and all the things you've done, to get back in the car, first race, and it's like, bam, I just passed the whole field basically. I have to be like, yep, we're gonna pick off where we left off, sort of feeling.
Yeah, it was, it didn't start off the way I imagined. I didn't expect to take a provisional. It was a good thing we won the championship last year to where we could start that race. But yeah, gosh, we just passed almost everybody, and that was nice. You're like, because we celebrated obviously the championship, but I enjoy time off until like January 1, and then it's like, all right, it's time to go back to work. Like I'm ready to kind of get back going. I just want to do what I'm most comfortable with, and that is racing and getting in a schedule. But yeah, I mean, coming from the back to third and having a good shot to win that thing was obviously a nice feel. Like hey, we're still here. Like this thing, we're still can run up front. It was nice driving through, and yeah, so that's always nice when you can go and start off the year, even though it's an exhibition race at a funky racetrack, to go have a good run to start off the new year. You're like, all right, this is nice to know we still have the same swagger as we had ending last year.
Where do you want the Clash to go? What do you think? What do you think of that event, man? It's on everyone's mind. You're the champ. You got the biggest voice. What is on your mind about what the Clash should be or where it should go?
Yeah, that's been a big talking point. I thought it was great at the Coliseum for a few years. It was something that was very out there. NASCAR took a chance with it a few years ago, and it worked, right? I think everyone really enjoyed it. The race is what it is, right? You're running around a football stadium, like it's gonna be bumper cars. All right, we get it. If we had to change it up, like I personally enjoyed the whole Speed Weeks aspect, of Daytona. Like you're there we used to be there Thursday to the next Sunday, and you could even condense it down now to where you could just be there a whole week and still do the Clash on the super speedway. But I don't think that's the best place. I personally have thought like you go to New Smyrna, so you're already down in Florida. It's a great little short track. It's got a good crowd following. You could even do it with the late models and modifieds there that same weekend. I think New Smyrna would be great, but I think right, NASCAR wants to go to a big market, right? Like a crazy out there market, like LA, Chicago Street Course is another example. Like I don't know where you could do it. So you got to find a big city to where you could plow a racetrack in the middle of somewhere, and I don't know where you can do it. The Coliseum's a unique one because it's bigger than your normal stadium. So you'd have to build. I've heard talks like there's a horse track in New York by like Truist Field. No, one of the stadiums up there, and there's like a horse track. People are like, oh, pave over the horse track, but I'm like, New York in February, the 1st of February. I don't know if the weather's going to let you do that. So hey, I'm good doing it anywhere. Just make it unique, because that's.
I would say that we should do it. We should find a way to do it in Madison Square Garden, but they probably wouldn't even give you any credit that you were even there at the event.
No, they wouldn't. That was cold, man. That was dirty on that one.
I know. What was that about?
I don't know, man. We were sitting at the Knicks game courtside with Netflix because we were promoting the new show, and awesome. Obviously, I mean, being at the Garden is amazing. That was my second time there, and it's a very historic place, and was a cool experience. But yeah, what made it worse was the photographer was like, Bubba, Ryan, get in for a photo. And we kind of leaned in for a picture. And then the next morning I saw they just I got like my shoulder. And I'm like, oh, man, that's tough right there. Jeez.
Does that happen normally when you hang out with a real celebrity like Bubba Wallace?
Hey, I always say, dude, I'm his photographer when I'm out with him. Like, they're like, hey, Bubba. And they're like, hey, who are you? I'm like, I'm just his PR guy.
You're the Instagram boyfriend?
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace and friends.
I get him drinks. That's what I do.
That's awesome. What has been reception for the Netflix thing? So I watched it. I thought it was great, seeing behind the scenes of you guys. What's that been like since it came out? I know like when it was filming, man, I bumped into those cameras and the boom mic every 3 feet on pit road. Because that was like, for the people that don't see the outside, it would be like a camera, a boom mic, a producer, and they were in a pod that would just roam following you guys all over the place.
Yeah, it was, gosh, I mean, I feel like everybody enjoyed it. Like the people I've talked to that have seen it, the response on social media, I think it's all been really positive. I haven't really seen too many negative things about it, and it was cool. I mean, it's a cool little insight of the whole grueling 10 weeks, of the playoffs and what goes into it and how emotions are. I mean, I don't think people see that a lot. Like, it's stressful times. It's stressful for 10 weeks and trying to put together 10 good weeks. And they Darlington, the first playoff race last year, my the guy who catches my tires over the wall bowled over Netflix camera guy because they were just in the way. And this guy, like, I gotta get this tire. I mean, he bowled this guy over. And so it was a little different having him around, but they were great. I mean, they were really respectful of everybody, but also wanting to get into, what makes everybody tick. And I tried to be as open as I could with them. Like, yeah, follow us around. I think it's going to be cool. And it just, was a bonus that we ended up winning the championship when they were filming. So that was even better.
Do you think, we live in this world right now where authenticity is a premium, right? And transparency is a premium, because these future generations, these younger kids, they're not just falling for things right on social media. They can see through BS pretty easily. So it to me, it feels like for us as a sports league and content creators, like, we're gonna have to allow for more content like this behind the scenes, and we're gonna have to be real for people to want to watch our sport. Is that something, for when you said, like, man, it took some getting used to, and you're undoubtedly probably had to pick and choose, like, I know that there's cameras rolling here, and maybe I'm going to share this conversation with my crew chief for later, and I'll just is that something that maybe we're just going to have to adapt to? Something you think you could get good at, to where ultimately we have a made for Netflix production?
Yeah, that stuff's it's a weird time right now, like you said, with all the access that people can get now, streaming, all these things, right, behind the scenes. Like, it's not enough to just put a product out there, like, no matter what it is, racing, football, basketball. You can't just
open ourselves up to everything.
TV. Yeah, like, you have to draw people in, and drawing people in is like showing them behind the scenes and what it actually goes into it and what makes people tick, and knowing these people for people and not just athletes that they see on TV. And I think that's what draws people in more. And it gets harder and harder to like draw people in and make them watch. Like, I feel like that's just getting so hard to do now. And for kids too, like, you have to have a draw. Like, just the product on TV is not enough to draw people in. Like, you need to have another hook to kind of get people in. Yep. And I think this is what's doing that, right? You see everyone doing it, right? NFL did the quarterback, series. Yeah. The Hard Knocks has been around for a while, but that was kind of like, what that is. They follow a team around and kind of show the in and outs of their weeks and what goes on the sidelines and what they talk about personally, game strategy stuff. So I feel like you have to do it. I mean, if you're not doing it, you're not succeeding as a organization. So I think it's something that, everyone needs to get used to, because I don't see it going away anytime soon. It's just going to get more access. People want more access.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you, it's said often that as a champion, you kind of become a representative of the sport, and you definitely did that in this offseason, going to things like the Knicks game, although they were so rude. The Today Show, that sort of stuff. What's your perception of NASCAR out there? I know, like, we all know this NASCAR Netflix was to hopefully bring more eyes to the sport, right? We all know there's a little bit of work to be done to bring it to new markets like in LA, like Chicago. But from what you experienced this offseason and just in general, what do you feel like the reception of NASCAR is, the perception, and is it sort of turning with things like this that you're noticing?
I think it is turning in a positive way. NASCAR gets this, or it did for a long time, it gets this whole label on it. It's like, oh, you just country Southern boys running around in circles, and that's just the stigma that it had for a long time. And it's things like the Netflix deal and all these access, like, it's showing that we're not all just like dumb rednecks. Like, there's personality behind it. There's a lot that goes into these things, and to make cars go around the racetrack, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. And I feel like once you show that, people appreciate it, and they just get a new perspective on things, which I think is good. Now there is another side though, to where, sports and racing, back in the day, no matter what form of sport it was, there was this like allure to it. Like, no one knows anything about these people. Like, that's what made, I thought, like, that's what blew F1 up the way it did, was because, like, no one knew these guys. Like, you didn't see interviews with these guys. No one knew what their life was like outside of what they saw on the TV. Like, they were very sheltered off, and like no one knew about them. And honestly, I would say F1 was the same way until like Drive to Survive came out. And then it kind of opened up some doors of like, oh, okay, we can actually talk to these guys and see their day-to-day stuff. Like, and I think NASCAR's done a really good job of access, but like, there's a fine line of like, you can't show too much access, but you have to keep people interested too. Like, I'm rambling, but I feel like there's a fine line of like, what makes us unique and cool. Like, there's some mystery behind it. You have to keep some mystery behind these things, but you have to balance that out. I feel like a little bit.
The F1 deal was so funny. To your point, like 2019, 2017, they were talking about not having a single race here. They were, it was just that unpopular, and that's what that Netflix thing did for them, and it just blew up in so many respects, and they proved this model. But like, so what is for you? Did you find like what's the right balance, or do you think this is something we're just going to have to keep searching for, and like you just got to do what you're comfortable with? Which I feel like you're pretty out there in a lot of ways, your content and being on the Netflix show and all that stuff. Would you do it differently, or is it this is like it's up to each individual?
Yeah, I think it's up to each individual, right? Like, and you saw it on the show, right? Like Denny gave tons of access to the Netflix folks, right? I mean, and he's in it a lot because he,
he loved it, by the way.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
opening up my doors completely. I am going to show you my shop, my home life, everything. You're going to follow me around for 3 days of the week. And I think that's right. Everyone's different, right? I told them, I was like, hey, my weeks aren't very entertaining. Like, my week is very like, I was like, if you want to film the real stuff, I'm like, you could watch me waking up and pouring coffee and taking a dump and watching TV. Like, I don't know. Like, that's every morning. I have that routine. I think it's right. Everyone's independent on how they approach it. And some guys are super sheltered off and don't want to show anything, which is fine. And some guys are really open and want to show a ton, which is fine too. It's just all preference. Yeah.
Well, you got me, my wheels turning, all that. I think it is a fascinating time, and it's going to be interesting to see, where this goes. Would you want them to do this all season? Like, if they said, hey, we're going to do all 38 weeks. Or was it the 10, the little before the playoffs and then the playoffs the right amount?
Yeah, I think they did a good job of doing, like, the first one, just the playoffs. Well, they did Daytona, but, like, and it was only 5 episodes. Like, they didn't do 10 episodes. They didn't do a race a week. I think that was good. Going forward, if it gets picked up again, maybe they do, 8 episodes, 10 episodes, to where you can, maybe it's not all season, but maybe like a month before the playoffs start, because then you're going to have guys that need a win to get in. The points battles is usually pretty tight to try to get the last spot. I think that would be good to highlight that too, because that's super stressful as well. But I don't know if you need to do all year. I don't. That's a lot. Too much content. We keep talking about like everyone wants content, but if you kind of oversaturate it, people might lose interest, right? So you have to have these things where they're very stressful situations. They wouldn't go follow, the Lakers around in game 50 of the year, right? Like, it's just the middle of the year kind of thing. It's like, oh, all right, well, there's no stakes, right? Everyone wants to see stakes. And I think the playoffs bode well for high stakes because that's what they are. So I think that's right.
And to your point, the good thing is there's not enough podcasts out there. So the Money Lap podcast is filling a big void out, that's lacking for people that want this kind of content. Let's move some fun stuff, man. Before we let you get going here, I'm just thinking, so you mentioned the F1 stuff. Are you an F1 fan? Were you a fan of that? Do you have a favorite team in F1?
Yeah, I'm just a motorsports fan, right? I mean, I love all forms of racing. And F1, I'd say I'm Alonso is like, I love watching Alonso. I love seeing his like success, last year. That and my guy Lewis, man. I mean, making the big jump a year ahead.
I know.
A year ahead, man.
What was he thinking?
Crazy. Got to sell shirts, man. Got to sell them t-shirts a year ahead. So, so I love Alonso. I love Lewis. And I'm excited to see his switch to Ferrari. I can't wait. That's going to be just crazy. Seeing him in a red fire suit and a red car. I mean, that's just going to be so nuts. And
exciting.
Who fills that seat? I'm curious who fills that seat.
We talked about how on our podcast how great of a setup this is for Lewis because best case scenario he brings Ferrari a world championship for the first time in a long time, and that's a knockout for him. Worst case scenario, he rides off to the sunset wearing red. I mean, how bad can that be?
Yeah,
So
that's what Vettel did. You know,
Yeah,
that's
true.
not entirely bad either. Are you a fan when it comes to F1? Are you a fan of just seeing greatness in real time when it comes to Verstappen and Red Bull and just the unreal dominance? And are you would you be interested in rooting for an F1 season where they won every race, or are you like, I want to see someone dethrone them and the drama around that? Like, what can you appreciate as a fan there?
I appreciate the dominance of that group right now because that's hard to do. I don't think people understand. I mean, that is so hard to do to win. I mean, Red Bull won all but one race last year, right?
Right.
I think Sainz won the other one, and I mean, Max winning 85% of them. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? So you have to appreciate that. Like that's hard to not appreciate. Would I like to see a little bit more parity? Yeah, I mean, I think everyone would, right? You want to see, at least like 6 guys who have a shot week in and week out to win it, right? Like, and enough. I mean, I've been guilty of it. I wake up Sunday mornings and watch the F1 races, and if Max gets away clean on the start, okay, he's gonna win, like no drama, like so. But honestly, though, the F1 year in 23, I thought second on back was like the best racing we've seen in a while.
Racing.
Like it got overshadowed by Max's dominance, but like super great racing for second to like 10th, which I thought
McLaren,
was
Ferrari,
awesome.
Mercedes, like they took their turns on the podium.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was really good. Really good. What's is there another form of racing you'd want to do? I saw you mention the Indy 500. Would you want to do like the Rolex 24? Obviously, RP's got the Porsches out there. Although I think Joseph had to work really hard to get a ride in one of those. Is Le Mans on your bucket list? I don't know. What's out there that you'd want to do as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've said, doing the double would be something really neat. That's a cool staple to try to go and compete for that. Not a lot of guys have been able to do it. I'm excited to watch Larson do it. This year, I think he's going to do great. So yeah, I mean that one. Obviously, I'd love to go run Daytona, the 24 there, and no matter what class, just kind of to be a part of that race would be super historic. I'm just a stock car guy. I don't think I could get a prototype ride.
Well,
you got the new Dark Horse. That's right. Yeah. You got the new. Yeah, you got Ford's.
Yeah, I could go run the Dark Horse there in the GT class. So, but yeah, that. I mean, those are like the only realistic races I would love to do. I'll tell you, I would love to be a part of Baja one year. Like do the Baja 1000.
Yes.
I've heard some cool stories about that. I'm wearing my Bronco shirt. Ford has a new Bronco that they're going to be running there, this upcoming year.
Oh, no kidding.
And so they're super excited about that. So that would be cool to just be a part of. Like I've heard wild stories about drivers who've done the Baja 1000, and it's just craziness for that whole time. So those are probably my top 3. Yeah.
You know what that makes me think of, actually, that for drivers like ourselves, that like not to say that those drivers aren't taking those vehicles to the limit, right? But like we spend our whole career just focused on corner after corner, lap after lap. It would be fun to do some kind of race or event where it's just like the driving experience itself is something. Like it's not about restarts and 3 wide here and pit stops. It's just the driving experience. Yeah. Bringing profile. Like, again, I'm sure that stuff matters in Baja, but like, I don't know, just having my boy next to me running through the night in the middle of the desert.
That'd be
sounds
awesome.
like fun.
Hopefully you don't put your papers up to where everything is. Like, wait, where are we at?
Left, right, 4 Titans, the rally drivers.
Parker, I think we just did that one.
That's true. We did.
That's got to be the craziest. Being the rally car right seater, like the navigator, that has to be more stressful than driving.
I don't know if you could get me to do that.
I can't read that.
I would, first of all, couldn't read that fast. I'd throw up immediately. I feel like car sick, like first corner, it'd be like, oh nope, why am I doing this? And they do it for 2 hours.
Yeah,
sitting in there. I don't understand how they do that.
Not being in control would make me weirded out too. Like you have full faith in the guy sitting next to you that's driving this thing, but like Okay, all right. Sharp 90 lefty right here, and you see him still going like a $120. You're like, I can imagine the brake pedal in the thing.
Oh my god! Oh yeah, on the side, the passenger side brake pedal. That would be a nice one.
Yeah.
You just pull the e-brake here and be like, "I'm done. Stop. Please don't let me do this." Man, before we let you jump, just looking ahead to the rest of this year, what should we be paying attention to? You guys got a new car for the Ford teams. Toyota brought a new car. What's on your mind as to how you can back up and make it 2 for 2 in the NASCAR Cup Series?
Yeah, we're excited about the new car, the new dark horse Mustang. Is we're really excited about that, and seeing where that's at. We tested it at Phoenix. I thought it had good potential. We'll see where it's at. Obviously Daytona and Atlanta are one thing. Starting off the year, but kind of seeing where you get to at Vegas at the 1.5 miles. It's really going to see where your program's at. The Toyotas are going to be tough with their new car too. I think they made improvements as well. But yeah. Just seeing where, the top of my list right now is trying to win the 500. That's easy to say. But, we have a unique opportunity to do the dream deal, right? Championship, then 500, right, back to back. That's the ultimate mission. So trying to add more history and wins and championships to RP, and Roger's resume, that's like the biggest thing that we want to do right now. I just had a radio call before I jumped on here, and they were saying, well, you can't really buy Roger any gifts. So how do you repay Roger? I'm like, well, winning races and being successful. That's the only thing you can do for him. So that's our goal. Continue to build on the great year he had last year and how he started this year with the Rolex. Just trying to keep building on that. I
was going to say, the Indy 500 last year, you got the Rolex, you got the championship with you add in the Daytona 500. It could be all of it. It could be RP's just taking over global motorsport, which would be insane. Dude, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. We appreciate it.
A lot of fun. Appreciate it.
See you, bud.
See you.
Thanks for listening to The Money Lap. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the best 5 minutes in motorsports, or sometimes just the coolest stuff in motorsports, delivered directly to your inbox 3 times a week. Check us out on YouTube. We're growing fast over there. And, of course, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the internet. We're spreading the word of how cool motorsports is. Check us out.